Hey guys, tonight we're crawling down into the cool, shadowed depths of a quiet, circular chamber beneath the desert floor. There's the faint smell of sage in the air, mingling with wood smoke from a small fire pit. The walls are made of sandstone, carefully cut, fitted tight, glowing orange in the flickering light. Overhead, a small ladder leads up through a round roof hatch, and the stars above are starting to wink into view. You're sitting cross-legged, wrapped in a soft woven robe, listening to nothing but the crackle of fire and the faint whisper of wind outside. Welcome to a Puebloan kiva, part sacred, part practical, always mysterious. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know who's listening from where. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through dry canyon paths, the soles of your sandals worn thin from the desert floor. Everything around you seems timeless, the way the wind sculpts the red cliffs, how shadows stretch long across the scrublands at dusk. This is Chaco Canyon, Mesa Verde, or maybe Bandelier, depending on where you've wandered, but you wouldn't know any modern names for it. All you know is that you're part of something older than maps. Tonight, your home, your dwelling, half built into the rock, is simple but surprisingly snug. Adobe walls baked in the sun, beams of which stretching overhead, and a kind of quiet that makes every breath feel like a prayer. Inside, things are arranged with care. There's a hand-woven mat near the hearth. Corn is stacked neatly in baskets. Along one wall, painted pots line up like sentinels, some chipped, some with delicate black spirals still intact. You lower yourself into the kiva as twilight deepens. This is no ordinary room. Round, sunken, and built below the surface, it's both shelter and symbol. Families gather here on cold nights, wrapped in blankets, telling stories passed down like heirlooms. Ceremonies happen here too, small and solemn, involving feathers, smoke, and songs you don't quite understand, but that stir something deep and ancestral. In the center of the kiva's floor is a small, perfectly round hole, maybe the width of your fist. It's nothing much to look at, just a hole, but everyone treats it with quiet reverence. You've been told never to place anything over it, never to fill it in. And once, when you were younger and asked about it, someone simply said, "That's where we came from." You thought they meant your family. They didn't. Your people, the Ancestral Puebloans, known by some as the Anasazi, have lived in these lands for thousands of years. You grow corn, beans, squash. You trade turquoise for macaws and copper bells. You know the land and sky intimately. You can read a cloud like a book. And every year, you mark the changing sun with quiet awe. But it's not an easy life. The desert doesn't give up its gifts freely. You carry water long distances. You brace for sudden droughts. And you rely on each other, family, neighbors, the entire village to survive. That interdependence forms the fabric of your days. You grind maize together, you repair walls, you raise each other's children. Privacy is less a right than a humorous concept. And yet, amid all this practicality, there's an abiding sense of wonder. You believe you didn't just emerge in this world. You climbed here. Through worlds. Through struggle. From darkness into light. The small hole in the kiva floor isn't just architectural, it's symbolic. A portal. A memory. A beginning. That hole has a name, Sipapu. We'll come back to it, again and again. Just like your ancestors do in ceremony. Outside the kiva, the stars are brilliant. No cities, no light pollution. Just you and the galaxy. Coyotes yip faintly in the distance, and a thin line of smoke rises through the roof vent. You can still hear the rhythmic tapping of someone shaping a pot in the room above. And you wonder, not for the first time, if those ancient stories about the people who came before, in the world that came before, are more than just stories. Because here, in this place of fire and sandstone and silence, the past isn't past. It's beneath your feet, around your hearth, inside your breath. You reach down and touch the stone rim around the Sipapu. It's smooth, worn by generations. Someone once whispered to you that it's also a reminder to live humbly, to respect the earth, to never forget the worlds that came before. The fire pops. Sparks drift upward. A shadow passes by the ladder above, then vanishes. Maybe someone coming to join you, or maybe just the wind. It's hard to tell, and harder still to care. The kiva, the night, the slow flicker of flame, they hold you, cradle you, wrap you in stillness. You rest your eyes. And the story, like the Sipapu, is only just beginning. You wake to the soft clink of a pottery lid being set down, a faint whisper of footsteps on packed earth above you. The fire has gone low, embers glowing like sleepy eyes. You climb up the ladder slowly, one hand brushing the smoke-darkened edges of the roof hatch. As your head clears the surface, the world opens, vast, still, utterly ancient. The landscape stretches out in golds and browns, with distant cliffs etched like folded parchment. This is the American Southwest in all its stoic grandeur, and you, a Puebloan inhabitant, are part of its slow heartbeat. You're not alone in this vastness. Far from it. Your neighbors live in a cluster of homes, walls pressed close like gossiping grandmothers. These aren't just structures, they're survival. Thick adobe and sandstone walls keep out heat in summer, keep warmth inside through winter. The roofs are flat, sometimes used to sleep under the stars. You've probably done that yourself, chewing dried corn and staring at constellations that feel closer than your own reflection in a pot of water. Life is rhythmic here. Predictable in some ways, but far from easy. Every day begins with the sun and a quiet moment of gratitude. You know the land offers just enough if you know how to ask gently. Water, of course, is everything. You carry it in clay jars from springs that whisper their secrets through canyons. You learn to read clouds like their relatives, fickle, prone to disappearing, but generous when they stay. A good rain means full stores and extra time to carve new petroglyphs on canyon walls. A dry season means rationing, singing, and careful observation of the old trails where your ancestors walked. And oh, those ancestors. You can almost hear them in the wind sometimes, can't you? Their stories, etched into stone and sky, live all around you. You walk past cliff faces where hands, spirals, and horned animals have been scratched into rock, a kind of forever graffiti. No one's quite sure what they all mean, even now. Historians still argue whether the symbols mark hunting trails, sacred rites, or seasonal calendars. The world you live in may seem quiet, but it's anything but dull. The ancestral Puebloans built massive complexes, some with over 600 rooms. You might live near one now. Chaco Canyon, with its great houses aligned to the solstices, speaks of deep time and architectural genius. There's a sense of intention in every stone, every corridor that channels sunlight perfectly on certain days of the year. Still, the sun climbs higher, and your thoughts turn from myths to more mundane matters. A cracked pot needs mending. The beans need to be stirred. A cousin wants help patching a wall. The sacred and the ordinary blend seamlessly here. There's no line between spiritual life and daily chores. You pause at the edge of a mesa. The wind is dry, but it carries something. A memory, maybe, or the faint scent of roasting piñon nuts. You think of the Sipapu again. That small hole in the kiva, always so carefully tended. You were told it's the portal through which your people emerged into this world. But it's more than a creation symbol. It's a reminder that every surface hides a depth, that every act has a sacred twin. As you walk back toward your home, the sun dipping slightly west, you pass a neighbor's doorway. A string of turquoise beads swings lazily in the breeze. Inside, you hear soft humming, a song about something you can't translate, but know instinctively. You smile. You hum too. Life here is fragile, but full. You duck back into your home, the scent of earth and smoke waiting to welcome you. The Sipapu sits in the kiva floor, still and mysterious. It has seen more than you ever will. And yet, you feel like it's watching you, gently, patiently, like a grandparent who already knows how the story ends, but enjoys your telling of it anyway. You're up early the next morning. The sun hasn't yet crested the far cliffs, but the sky is already hinting at another long, bright day. Your fingers trace the cracks in the adobe as you move past the walls of your home. The whole village stirs slowly, quiet, deliberate, like the land itself. Homes like yours aren't just places to sleep. They're built with the land, not against it. Adobe bricks, mud mixed with straw and sun, breathe with the air. The walls hold warmth like memories. Floors are swept smooth, cool to the touch, and often sprinkled with a little water to keep the dust down. Windows are small, mostly just to let light in, not to look out. There's not much need to see the outside when the world is always speaking to you anyway. These aren't solo homes. Most are part of connected clusters. You share space, rooftops, walls, courtyards. You share food and tools and stories. And that's by design. The architecture here encourages togetherness. Even the ladders between floors, simple poles with notched footholds, invite movement, community, help. Each home has its own small hearth, but when it's cold, people often descend into the kiva. Down there, the earth holds you like a womb. It's warmer in winter, cooler in summer. Fires are lit low, and people gather not just for ceremony but for comfort. To talk, to sing, to fall asleep against a cousin's shoulder. You glance at your own kiva again. There's something compelling about it. Its circular design, its symmetry. Unlike the square homes above, the kiva is round like the sun, like the moon, like cycles that have no end. The Sipapu sits at its center like a punctuation mark in a sentence too old to remember how it started. The roundness isn't accidental. It reflects a worldview that sees time and life as loops, not lines. You live, you die, you return. Maybe not in the same form, maybe not in the same place, but return you will. And while your people didn't leave behind books, they left something just as enduring, architecture that reflects belief. Everything is integrated. Roof beams, made from straight pine hauled many miles from the mountains, are carefully laid with layers of smaller branches, reeds, and packed mud. They don't just hold the roof, they tell a story. A tree's journey from alpine forests to your ceiling. A material shaped by many hands. A sky you now sleep beneath with gratitude. Every piece has a purpose, a meaning. Even a stone set just so can reflect a memory. And that's a Sipapu? It's not random, either. Always located in front of the fire pit. Always aligned with the cardinal directions. You don't touch it casually. You don't joke about it. You acknowledge it, daily, silently. It's a part of your home the way your heart is part of your body, quiet but essential. Some visitors, traders, perhaps, or the occasional distant cousin, have looked at it skeptically. Just a hole, they might think. A superstition. But then again, those same visitors sleep restlessly under open skies, tossing through dreams they can't explain. You sleep well, not because life is easy, but because your home, your beliefs, and your land form one continuous breath. One long exhale into the waiting dark. You're up early the next morning. The sun hasn't yet crested the far cliffs, but the sky is already hinting at another long, bright day. Your fingers trace the cracks in the adobe as you move past the walls of your home. The whole village stirs slowly, quiet, deliberate, like the land itself. Homes like yours aren't just places to sleep. They're built with the land, not against it. Adobe bricks, mud mixed with straw and sun, breathe with the air. The walls hold warmth like memories. Floors are swept smooth, cool to the touch, and often sprinkled with a little water to keep the dust down. Windows are small, mostly just to let light in, not to look out. There's not much need to see the outside when the world is always speaking to you anyway. These aren't solo homes. Most are part of connected clusters. You share space, rooftops, walls, courtyards. You share food and tools and stories. And that's by design. The architecture here encourages togetherness. Even the ladders between floors, simple poles with notched footholds, invite movement, community, help. Each home has its own small hearth, but when it's cold, people often descend into the kiva. Down there, the earth holds you like a womb. It's warmer in winter, cooler in summer. Fires are lit low, and people gather not just for ceremony but for comfort. To talk, to sing, to fall asleep against a cousin's shoulder. You glance at your own kiva again. There's something compelling about it. Its circular design, its symmetry. Unlike the square homes above, the kiva is round like the sun, like the moon, like cycles that have no end. The Sipapu sits at its center like a punctuation mark in a sentence too old to remember how it started. The roundness isn't accidental. It reflects a worldview that sees time and life as loops, not lines. You live, you die, you return. Maybe not in the same form, maybe not in the same place, but return you will. And while your people didn't leave behind books, they left something just as enduring, architecture that reflects belief. Everything is integrated. Roof beams, made from straight pine hauled many miles from the mountains, are carefully laid with layers of smaller branches, reeds, and packed mud. They don't just hold the roof, they tell a story. A tree's journey from alpine forests to your ceiling. A material shaped by many hands. A sky you now sleep beneath with gratitude. Every piece has a purpose, a meaning. Even a stone set just so can reflect a memory. And that's a Sipapu? It's not random, either. Always located in front of the fire pit. Always aligned with the cardinal directions. You don't touch it casually. You don't joke about it. You acknowledge it, daily, silently. It's a part of your home the way your heart is part of your body, quiet but essential. Some visitors, traders, perhaps, or the occasional distant cousin, have looked at it skeptically. Just a hole, they might think. A superstition. But then again, those same visitors sleep restlessly under open skies, tossing through dreams they can't explain. You sleep well, not because life is easy, but because your home, your beliefs, and your land form one continuous breath. One long exhale into the waiting dark. Morning again, and the light outside is soft and golden, thin as a whisper. Your bones ache just a little from sleeping on reed mats, but it's a familiar kind of ache, the good kind. Outside your doorway, someone is already grinding maize on a stone matate, the rhythmic scrape sounding like the heartbeat of the household. You step around the corner into the plaza, where the morning begins slowly, unhurried, and scented with smoke from cooked fires and the faint sweetness of dried corn. Your younger cousin is chasing a dog, half pet, half security system, with a stick. The dog tolerates it. Barely. Daily life here is not a chore. It's a ceremony of repetition. Corn is life, so you tend to it. Water is sacred, so you carry it with care. Even sweeping the dust out of your home has a kind of grace to it. You do it not just for cleanliness, but to clear old energy, to make space for the day ahead. The children help where they can, though they're more likely to be found crouched near anthills or tossing pebbles at lizards. The elders, meanwhile, take to the shade early, discussing matters that seem both mundane and timeless. Which direction the clouds came from, how full the moon looked last night, whether that gourd should have been picked earlier. But it's in these rhythms that identity takes root. The way you grind corn, the way you mend a cracked jar with pinyon sap, the way you tell stories, never quite the same way twice, around the fire. And always, beneath it all, is the quiet knowing that your life sits on top of something deeper. That every movement, every task, is somehow tied to that small hole in the kiva floor. The Sipapu may not be part of your chores, but it's part of your consciousness. You can't forget it, because it isn't just myth, it's architecture. It's ritual. It's baked into your worldview the way the sun is baked into the walls. And besides, there are rules. No food is placed near it. No one crosses over it. Children are taught early. That's not just a hole. That's a boundary. And every culture needs boundaries. As the afternoon heat settles like a wool blanket on the shoulders of the village, you find yourself in the cool shade of a storeroom. Rows of clay pots, some holding cornmeal, others beans or squash seeds, line the shelves like patient little spirits. Food, here, is about survival, but it's also about trust. Trust that the rains will come, that the seeds will sprout, that the ancestors are still listening. Every harvest is more than a success. It's proof the world still cares. You help your aunt prepare something thick and smoky. A stew, maybe. She tosses in some dried chilies and makes a face, too many? You both laugh. But your laugh is quiet. Always quiet. Even food is offered with a kind of reverence. Before eating, a pinch might be dropped on the ground, offered to the spirits below. Sometimes that pinch is tossed toward the Sipapu, just in case. Later, as you sip water from a gourd carved with delicate spirals, you hear the old men debating something again. This time it's about the twin gods, beings who helped your people emerge from the underworld and gave them instructions for living. But some say those are just metaphors. Symbols for balance, for duality, light and dark, male and female, corn and water. Others disagree. Firmly. They believe the stories are literal history passed down through generations, only slightly bent by time. Historians still argue whether the Puebloan creation myths are purely symbolic or grounded in migration memory. But in your world, the line between memory and myth is porous. Your body remembers what your mind doesn't. So when the elders talk, you listen. Not just to the words, but to the pauses. The silences are sacred too. And as you help carry food down to the kiva for tonight's meal, your fingers brush the edge of the Sipapu again. Always there. Always waiting. Today you're traveling. Not far, just to the next village, perched atop a sunburnt ridge, its walls glowing softly under the midday sun. You walk along a worn trail, the kind generations have used, their footsteps carving a path so gently it's more suggestion than road. The terrain shifts subtly. Sagebrush gives way to taller grasses. A small lizard scurries across your path, its head bobbing in that comically self-important way lizards have. Somewhere, a hawk circles, unseen but present in your skin. You carry trade goods, small clay jars, perhaps, or painted pendants carved from bone. Everyone trades here. It's not barter. It's relationship maintenance. The other village looks like yours but smells different, earthier, smokier. You nod at a group of women making pigment from crushed ochre. A child points at you and laughs. Maybe it's your hair. Maybe it's your shoes. You laugh back. You're invited into someone's kiva, a rare gesture. Their Sipapu is similar but slightly wider, lined with darker stones. Their stories, too, have a different lilt. Here, they say the first people climbed through 3 worlds before reaching this one. Others say 4. Others say they never climbed at all, but were blown upward by sacred breath. The variation doesn't bother anyone. It's not contradiction, it's richness. A culture of storytelling isn't interested in footnotes. It wants meaning. Over a shared bowl of pinole, you learn that their ceremonies involve a dance your people no longer perform. But the rhythm feels familiar, like a song you forgot you knew. When the sun begins to sink, you thank your hosts and head home. The trail glows under twilight, and every step feels more significant than the last. At your own kiva that night, you look at the Sipapu differently. Maybe it isn't just a portal for people. Maybe it's a passageway for stories. Wind picks up overnight, and the next morning is crisp, dust curling around your ankles as you fetch water. The springs are further today, one dried up unexpectedly, which happens from time to time. You adjust. You move. You adapt. Adaptability is everything. Your people didn't build a civilization in the desert by being stubborn. They listened to the land, to the skies, to each other. You pass a granary carved into a cliff face, hidden unless you know just where to look. Its contents are meager, but carefully preserved. Dried squash, beans, even old tobacco, though that's mostly ceremonial now. Back in the village, someone is carving a flute from river cane. The notes are soft, exploratory. You pause to listen. Music, like everything here, has a function beyond entertainment. It invites balance. It calls rain. It soothes the gods, or at least keeps them from getting bored. As the tune floats through the air, you realize how much of your world is built on intangibles. Trust, timing, silence, shadow. That's Sipapu, for example. No one really explains how it works. They just know that it does. Some suggest it marks a sacred vortex, an energy center. Others believe it's a symbolic reminder to stay humble, to remember your origin. A few of the more whimsical elders claim they saw something once. Mist rising from the Sipapu when no fire was lit, or a sound like distant thunder. Historians still argue whether the Sipapu has any geological explanation. Was it modeled on natural sinkholes, caverns, or is it purely spiritual? You don't have answers. But as you help sweep the kiva later that afternoon, you find yourself pausing again at its edge. Just a hole, sure. But then again, your whole life revolves around it. You're deep into autumn now. The days shrink, the wind sharpens, and the evening fires are more than just cozy, they're necessary. Your household is busy drying meat, grinding the last harvest, and patching roofs for the coming cold. Everyone moves with the quiet urgency of animals building nests. You've heard whispers that snow has already dusted the high peaks to the north. That means time is short, but it also means stories. Winter is the storytelling season, and stories here aren't just tales. They're instruction manuals, warnings, maps for how to be human. Tonight, someone retells the tale of the time a Sipapu glowed in the dark after a sacred dance. Another says their great-aunt swore she saw a small lizard crawl in and not come out, ever. You smile. You don't have to believe everything to respect it. Besides, the world is strange enough already. Why not let it be magical, too? Snow arrives not with a storm, but with a hush. One morning, the world simply wakes up gentler, light pooled on rooftops, the air silenced like a held breath. The plaza is quieter now, footsteps muffled in powder. Even the dogs seem to bark less. You move slower, more deliberate. The chill in your nostrils reminds you, nothing lasts forever. Not even the seasons. You help your grandmother tend the fire, which crackles like laughter in an empty room. The kiva below stays warmer than expected, and you find yourself down there more often. Conversations are softer. Less about chores, more about ideas. One evening, someone shares a dream. In it, the Sipapu filled with water and reflected the sky perfectly, as if it were a mirror made by the gods. The others murmur in appreciation. No one laughs. Dreams are messages, even when they're weird. You begin to notice something else. Everyone has a Sipapu story. A private one. A moment when they stared into the dark circle and felt, noticed. Not watched, exactly. Just witnessed. Historians still debate whether these feelings are psychological responses to sacred architecture or something else entirely. A symbolic gravity, perhaps. A center of attention that pulls on the brain. But for you, it's more personal. You've come to think of the Sipapu as a kind of eye. Not one that sees in the usual way, but something that remembers. And in a world where memories are carried more by people than paper, that matters. The midwinter ceremony is approaching. Preparations hum quietly under the surface. Special foods being fermented, costumes being repaired, old songs practiced when no one's listening. The village feels like it's holding its breath. You're chosen to help clean the kiva before the event. It's an honor, even if it means scrubbing soot and sweeping sand that somehow always returns. Every corner is examined. Every surface treated like sacred skin. The Sipapu, too, is part of the ritual. A fresh dusting of cornmeal circles its edge. Small offerings are placed nearby. Shells, feathers, turquoise beads. No one explains it. No one needs to. You ask your uncle what the ceremony's for. He smiles and says, to remind the sun to come back. You both know that's only half a joke. When the night arrives, the fire is lit, and the dancers emerge in slow, deliberate steps. Feathers swaying, footsteps in rhythm with drums that mimic a heartbeat you didn't know you missed. Smoke curls toward the Sipapu. Some believe it's the breath of the ancestors, rising. Others say it's an invitation for something deeper to join the room. Historians still wonder if these rituals were originally tied to agricultural cycles, celestial observations, or something more internal, an emotional calendar. You're not sure it matters. The result is the same. You feel rooted, reconnected, less like a person, more like a thread in a very old blanket. And when the final drumbeat fades, there is silence so profound it feels like it's pressing gently against your chest. It's spring again. The wind is warmer, birds are louder, and everything smells faintly of thawed soil. The people stir, stretching from their winter routines like sleepy bears. You're repairing pottery with pitch and patience. Someone nearby is building a new ladder, the old one splintered under the snow. Life resumes not with a bang, but a shuffle. But something's different. A visitor has arrived. A trader from farther south, his cloak dusted with strange pollen, his language a cousin to yours. He's seen other kinds of Sipapu, he says, some carved into cliff walls, others marked only with stones in the open air. He tells of a place where they use a spiral instead of a hole to mark the same idea: emergence, journey, return. Everyone listens, intrigued but cautious. Your people are not quick to change, but they do love a good comparison. Later, you hear two elders debate what this means. One says the Sipapu is universal, like fire or stars, something all humans carry, in one form or another. The other insists yours is unique, tied to this land, this lineage. Historians still argue whether the Sipapu was a singular Puebloan innovation or part of a broader pattern across indigenous North America. You're less concerned with the origin than the effect. Because no matter where it came from, it works. It anchors you. Reminds you that you're not the center of the story. Just a page in a very, very long book. You started noticing how often people touch the ground here. Not by accident, deliberately. A hand pressed to packed earth after a long journey. A forehead rested briefly against the floor during prayer. Even when someone drops something, they pause before picking it up, as if asking permission. It's not about superstition. It's about relationship. The earth is not the ground here. It's the mother, the source, the memory. The Sipapu, then, isn't just a hole, it's a mouth. One that whispers back if you know how to listen. You try it one night, staying behind in the kiva after everyone else is gone. The fire is dying, shadows dancing on stone walls. You sit, alone, cross-legged in the dimness. You don't speak. You just breathe. And something strange happens. You don't feel small. You feel placed. Like a piece of a puzzle you didn't even know was missing. Historians still question whether architecture can produce spiritual experiences or if people project meaning onto space. But space can shape behavior. You walk differently in a cathedral than you do in a storage room. So why wouldn't a perfectly round hole in the center of your sacred space change how you feel? You leave the kiva changed. Just a little. Like someone who's remembered a dream they didn't know they'd forgotten. One of the elders is dying. It's not a tragedy. She's old, full of stories, and carries a laugh so warm it makes soup jealous. She knows it's time. So does everyone else. In the days before her passing, people visit. Not to mourn, but to offer pieces of memory. Remember when you tricked that eagle? You always made the best squash bread. She laughs at every story, even the ones she denies. Especially those. The night before she dies, she asks to be taken to the kiva. Two strong young people carry her gently down the ladder. She asks to be set beside the Sipapu. She touches it with her fingers. Her eyes close. She says nothing. Later, someone asks what she felt. She says, the beginning again. After she's gone, the kiva stays quiet for several days. A kind of respectful stillness, as if even the walls are holding their breath. Historians still wonder if Sipapus were ever used during burials or rites of passage. Archaeology leaves gaps. Oral histories rarely draw clear lines. But you know what you saw. And when you walk past that kiva days later, you feel something like gratitude. And something like awe, /. Years pass. You've grown, your hands calloused with work and softened with care. The village is older, too. Roofs repaired, walls whitewashed. A new generation chases dogs across the plaza. Some things change, some don't. You still enter the kiva often. Now as a storyteller, a teacher, a keeper of rhythm. The Sipapu is still there, of course. Always there. You've come to see it differently. Not as a relic or even a mystery, but as a conversation. Each time someone kneels near it, they add a line. Each offering, each glance, is a word in a language deeper than sound. You remember the stories of emergence, of migration, of mist rising. You pass them on, always with a twinkle in your eye, always knowing that each listener will shape them slightly. And that's okay, because the Sipapu doesn't demand obedience. It invites attention. And maybe that's the best kind of sacred thing, one that doesn't insist, but waits. Tonight, as the fire burns low and children nod off in the corner, you feel that stillness again. The same one you felt years ago, alone in the kiva. Only now, it feels less like silence and more like music you've finally learned how to hear. So now, you rest. The fire is just embers now, warm against your palms. Outside, the stars scatter across the sky like flecks of crushed shell on black clay. A soft wind murmurs past your door. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't need answers. The kiva is quiet behind you. Its roundness still holding memory, still whispering in the language of stone and shadow. You've walked through many seasons, carried stories like seeds, and found rhythm in repetition. In every gesture, grinding corn, sweeping dust, touching earth, you've honored the unseen. And the Sipapu? It's there still. It hasn't changed, though maybe you have. You no longer stare at it, waiting for revelation. You simply let it be. A circle. A space. A breath. Somewhere deep, you feel the pull, the gentle gravity of belonging. Of being part of something bigger than your name, older than your bones. So you close your eyes. The world softens. The rhythm's slow. And whatever questions still linger, they can wait until morning. Good night.